Greetings. Do without wilt shall be the whole of the law. I'm Lexi Eve, and welcome back to another Magick Without Tears video. So today we're diving right into Chapter 4, the Qabalah, the best training for memory. Let's begin. So, as a Thelemite, I use Qabalah daily, and I think most Thelemites use Qabalah daily. It was the first system I began practicing after I discovered the Lima. In fact, it was impressed upon me by the person who told me about Crowley that I needed to understand Qabalah if I was going to make any progress with Crowley's literature. They were not wrong. In fact, the first book I ended up acquiring by Crowley because of them was Liber 777 and other Kabbalistic writings of Aleister Crowley. I had ordered a copy, it came, and I immediately cracked it open. And then I was thoroughly confused. I almost felt like I wasted $20, but rather than being discouraged, I read every word, probably understood less than 10% of it, but with that 10%, I felt, that's better than nothing, and so it didn't discourage me completely, actually kind of pressed me to want to really understand this thing. It challenged me. So I ended up axing around through people that I was hanging around with at the time, and they recommended I go to Regardie's A Garden of Pomegranates. So I got a copy of that and a copy of Regardie's Golden Dawn book. And Garden of Pomegranates is a wonderful place to start. It illuminates basically everything that you need to know as a beginner, and it makes it very easy to take in and understand. He writes in a very simple fashion. So I took the directions from that book and I began to learn the Hebrew alphabet. Every day I was writing each character, very detailed, square in shape, and the basic correspondences next to that letter, probably 5-6 times a day. Then after all that, once I had the Hebrew alphabet memorized, I went through that first book, I went back to 777. Now I had some insights into numbers being symbolic in nature, so Gematria was already making sense to me. But then, getting my hands on a tarot deck, doing readings for myself and others, the Magician's Table started to make sense. Each correspondence became a symbol to be meditated upon, in conjunction with its placement on the Tree of Life, and its interaction with each Sephiroth and path. So, just with my experience, it worked for me, doing it that way, and I implore all of you to begin immediately, just as I did. I think A Garden of Pomegranates, again, is a great place to start. Dive into Libers 58, 777, and 500, and do not skip the introductions. And then begin writing the Hebrew characters, treating each as a sacred symbol. Memorize the basic correspondences. Aleph is air. It means ox. Its value is 1. Its English equivalent is the letter A. If you could get those 5 or 6 basic correspondences down, and you do this every day, you get that all memorized, you're going to make an extraordinary amount of progress very fast. So all of that said, this leads us right into this chapter. Quote, Kara Sora, do without wilt shall be the whole of the law. Now you must learn Qabalah. Learn this alphabet of magic. You must take it on trust, as a child does his own alphabet. No one has ever found out why the order of the letters is what it is. Probably there isn't any answer. If you only knew what I am grappling with in the Yi King, the order of the 64 hexagrams, I am convinced that it is extremely significant, that it implies a sublime system of philosophy. I've got far enough to be absolutely sure that there is a necessary rhythm, and it's killing me by millimeters, finding out why each pair succeeds the last. Forget these tears, but our magical alphabet is primarily not letters but figures, not sounds but mathematical ideas, end quote. In regards to the, quote, order of letters, end quote, I assume Crowley is talking about either the tarot card correspondences, but it could also be why or how each letter was created, and why Aleph precedes Beth, precedes Gimel, etc. In regard to the last bit, it is easily agreeable that the Kabbalistic alphabets are primarily numerical. Every number is a symbol of the principle, idea of a thing in the physical, mental, and or spiritual universe. You could see my video about basic color, shapes, and numbers for explanation on the, simple numbers from 0 through 10. I also have a video about the number 11, which might be helpful as well. To continue, quote, Sir Humphrey Davy, coming out of his famous illumination, with some help from nitrous oxide he got in, he exclaimed, "The universe is composed solely of ideas. We, analyzing this a little, say, the universe is a mathematical expression. The simplest form of this expression is 0 equals 2, elsewhere expounded at great length. This 2 might itself be expressed in an indefinitely great number of ways. Every prime number, including some not in the series of natural numbers, is an individual." End quote. So natural numbers are every positive number from 1 to infinity. Negative numbers, fractions, and decimals are not whole numbers, therefore not natural numbers. Every number is distinct, individual, much as every person is individual, apart, a distinct star. Each number in fact conveys an idea. 1, the unity of all things is 1, with no distinction, for example. But numbers only have meaning when put in context, and kept in a series with other numbers. So in order to know 7, one must know 6 and 8 and all the rest. In addition, this leads to the idea of the number 7. So this brings up the old philosophical debate about whether math is in fact a part of nature, innate, or a human construct. And I can only give my opinion that the universe is in fact mathematical, as far as numbers are symbols and ideas, but these numbers exist independently of human perception. But that the universe, and therefore numbers, are all illusions, after the number 1, the unity. And what Crowley says about 0 equals 2, it's kind of implied in that formula that every number after 1 falls into that number 2, part of the duality state. So keep that in mind. Crowley explains that the idea of each number as a symbol can be, quote, be investigated in various ways, end quote. But that the Hebrew, Greek, and Arabic alphabets double as numbers and letters, and each letter is assigned an element, planet, or zodiac sign, which each have ideas and natures that synthesize the foundational meaning of each number. Quote, all these are arranged in a geometrical design composed of 10 Sephiroth, numbers, and 22 paths, joining them. This is called the Tree of Life. Every idea soever can be and should be attributed to one or more of these primary symbols. Thus, green in different shades is a quality or function of Venus, the earth, the sea, Libra, and others. So also abstract ideas. Dishonesty means an afflicted Mercury. Generosity a good, though not always strong Jupiter, and so on. End quote. Crowley stresses that all of these must be fully committed to memory. I recommend making cue cards that have written on them all the correspondences for each letter. There are 183 columns in the Magician's tables of Libra 777, though each column does not have every letter or Sephiroth. You need to know all of the correspondences. It takes time, though. Make a cue card for Aleph and study it for 2 to 3 weeks, 5 to 10 times a day. Have all of the correspondences for Aleph on those cue cards. Then for the next 2 or 3 weeks do Beth, then Gimel, and so on all the way to Tau. Then go back through your cards all over again for an additional week or 2. You can also do gematria on various words and look up the correspondences of each letter of a given word and play around with these symbols in regards to the word itself and to the group of words that have the same value when you add up all the letters of each word. Doing this daily as you study will in time make it easy to know the Qabalah. But like I said, that's in time, it takes time. Crowley writes in this chapter, quote, the Hebrew and Greek alphabets, with the names and numbers of each letter and its meaning, a couple of lists of God names, with a clear idea of the character, qualities, functions, and importance of each, the King's scale of color, all the tarot attributions, of course, then animals, plants, drugs, perfumes, a list or 2 of archangels, angels, intelligences, and spirits. That ought to be enough for a start, end quote. Hopefully that makes it a little less intimidating. It's maybe 10 correspondences per each letter that you really need to get started. And honestly, it's better to start with just the basics and understand them before finally building up anyways. It may seem intimidating to start, but really it becomes simple mnemonics. You memorize one letter and attach a series of ideas to it. After a short time, that one letter takes on the identity of that which all the ideas attached to it allude to, as well as an easier way to recall where a specific animal, plant, color, or deity is placed on the tree of life. Even if that thing hasn't been placed yet, you simply analyze its nature and you'll find out exactly where it belongs. Quote, "And then what a weapon you will have forged. But how to make the damn thing work? All the mathematics you need is simple addition and multiplication." End quote. And even though this is true, the Qabalah on its surface is quite simple, I find that what it does when properly used is kind of like a puzzle box you are forced to figure out the mechanics of. You twist and pull it in various shapes and combinations by various mental exercises, and when you get the right combination, a new pearl drops out in your hands. Crowley gives 2 examples of exercises. I'll quote the second one as I think it's easier to understand, and I think it's worth taking your time to puzzle around with. I will say the first exercise is to figure out why a path is placed where it is and correspond as it does. So you should spend the time doing that. Why is the path of Samek between Tifereth and Yesod? Why is the path of Gimel, a camel, corresponding with the moon between Tifereth and Kether? But anyway, the second example he gives, quote, 13 is the number of Achad, which means unity, and Eheba, love. Then, what word should arise when you expand it by the creative dyad, the number 2, and get 26? What when you multiply it by 4 and get 52? Then suppose the pentagram gets busy. 13 times 5 equals 65. What then? End quote. Use Liber 58 to get definitions of these numbers. Then check Sefer Sephiroth to look up the groupings of words with these values. Meditate on them. Quote, "You must construct your own Qabalah. Nobody can do it for you. What is your own true number? You must find it and prove it to be correct. In the course of a few years, you should have built yourself a palace of ineffable glory." End quote. Note, if you know your nature, having done the mysticism and introspection, and understand the nature of number, you can easily discover which numbers are aligned with your nature and use that towards performing your great work and doing your true will. Even seeking a magical motto becomes easy after you've gotten that far. Note that Liber 58 and 500 were written very early in Crowley's magical career, coming from the Golden Dawn, and are missing many numbers. This is good. You should then start your own book. Copy the words and numbers you discover therein, and continue the work for yourself. Note that what words and numbers will come your way are by chance, but truly nothing is by chance where magic is concerned, so pay attention to them and understand them. They may or may not be influential to you at some later time. Quote, "After that, let your work on the astral plane guide you. When investigating the name and other words communicated to you by such beings as you meet there or invoke, many more will come up in their proper connections. Very soon you will have quite a nice little Sefer Sephiroth of your own. Remember to aim above all things at coherence." End quote. So a side note about that last bit about coherence, all magic, especially Qabalah, always has a straightforward answer. It's been my experience that when you come up with something, it should be agreeable from all angles and can be explained so simply that even a child could understand the thesis. Make your study outcomes this legible and you'll be in a good place. To continue, quote, "It is excellent practice, but the way to do some mental arithmetic on your walks. Acquire the habit of adding up any names that you have come across in your morning's reading. Nietzsche has well observed that the best thoughts come by walking, and it has happened to me, more than once or twice, that really important correspondences have come as by a flashlight when I was patting the old hoof." End quote. And honestly, the same has happened to me. I get into a meditative state and let my mind run through many a topic as I go on long walks. In fact, several mystical experiences have occurred while I was on a long walk. Besides that, mentioned in other books, this practice of looking at the world through the lens of the magician's tables is something that you could do while on a walk. Once you have enough of the correspondences memorized, go about your day analyzing everything you see and put it in its place. You exit your house in the morning, passing through a door. Door means Daleth. You see your front gate. Gate means Chet. You can meditate on why these are as they are and placed where they are on the tree of life. But the point is this: if you are going about your day and keep seeing correspondences from a specific path, you should note them and try to understand what the universe is attempting to communicate to you. One important thing about Qabalah is that it comes from the study of nature, observation of nature. Everything in the universe fits into the Qabalah. Every function of the universe fits into the Qabalah. So going about your day, seeing the world, observing it, and looking for synchronicities, I guess you could say, that's a very valuable way to use the Qabalah. And then trying to understand why those synchronicities happen. Crowley closes the chapter with some harsh words against Timora and Nutarikon. He explains these methods fully in Liber 58 Gematria. I myself never really use them. I have used them, but the only time I ever found them useful is when I'm doing calculations and absolutely nothing stringent occurs amongst the cipher. And even then, I don't find it particularly reliable. Still, others such as the Rosicrucians have used these methods. And once in a while, the methods stick, and people end up using something that someone has discovered. So you could look those concepts up, Nutarikon and Timora. There's several different ways to use them. So note, again, this is an intro to Qabalah. A lot of Magick Without Tears is intro material, but I try to take it to, beyond 101. There's a lot more to Qabalah, but if you can get down these fundamentals, you're definitely on your way. If you have already gotten down these practices, the next step is in Sefer Yetzirah, the Behir, translated by R.E.A. Kaplan, and of course, the Zohar. For the Zohar, I recommend the Oxford Press translation of Daniel C. Matt. There are loads of other books, but these go very far into advanced and master levels of Qabalah, if you're ready for those. Love is the law, love under will. I'll catch y'all on the next one.